All right, so here we are, episode 2, season 1, episode 2 of The Wire.
Yes, sir. Called The Detail, correct?
The Detail. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. And just for clarity's sake, the detail is referring to the group, the group of cops. What exactly is a detail? I find that term in.
So I think it's they've been detailed, so they've been put. I think it's more of like a verb. They are verbed. They are detailed, but it is also a detail. So, so you're put on a detail, but you're also detailed to a detail.
Got it.
So,
a lot of details to go over in this episode.
My understanding is that a detail is like a group that's been pulled for a specific case.
Okay. That makes sense. And that's what they were. And then they all assembled in their new space.
Exactly.
I mean, we could jump right in. Yeah, that was kind of the first scene. Well, no, it wasn't the first scene, actually. Our first scene was the morgue, right?
Right. Bunk and McNulty talking about Gant, who was the witness that was killed from D'Angelo Barksdale's case. D'Angelo got off, and so they're just kind of talking about it. And McNulty kind of has a hunch. And it's Bunk's case, I guess. It's homicide. It's not part of the detail. It's just a homicide case that McNulty's partner got. So McNulty tags along, and he gives Bunk the heads up that he's probably going to say something to someone about the fact that a witness was murdered. A state's witness was murdered. And Bunk wants nothing to do with this.
Right. So we see kind of two stories going on. One, the continuation of the detail and them trying to get closer to Barksdale. And this is one more thread in that because this is the witness on the stand that Stringer didn't intimidate, the one they couldn't intimidate, the one that actually did testify against them. And then we saw the consequences of that was his murder. Now, it seems like the second part of it is that nobody wants this to be a murder because of the witness. They want it to be a random act of violence, as we see the episode progress.
Yeah, a big point, I guess their big sticking point is that it's bad for business if word gets out that witnesses are being killed. And that's something that you don't really ever see too often in TV as far as like I'm concerned, as far as like I'm familiar with, as far as like TV shows showing you the good side of, I guess, people telling. And it's usually something that's kind of looked down upon in hip hop, in a lot of movies. Usually the person that snitches gets shot. And that's usually like a good thing for the bad guy who's like the anti-hero. But in this case where you have like your anti-heroes, but you also have your police officers, I feel like they do a really good job of giving you kind of like their side, their point of view is the fact that they can't have witnesses being killed, being out there in the news. It just is bad for them. And that's the biggest thing they're trying to prevent, because then no one will ever come forward again.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective. I agree with you because we don't typically see the ramifications of a witness being murdered. So we kind of see the politics of it, I guess, for lack of a better word. We see how it can affect later cases. These cops won't be able to get anybody to testify if all the witnesses who do end up dead, even when the defendant got off on top of that. So,
exactly.
That kind of is the catalyst for the rest of this episode. It kind of kicks off our story. So we have Bunk and McNulty. They went to the morgue. The witness is dead, and McNulty, he can't let well enough alone. He's gonna go back to his judge friend, and it's not gonna be good.
And I don't know what's the vibe he got from Judge Fallon. So he tells the judge, like, don't tell anyone about me, and the judge is like, oh, I wouldn't do that. And what's the feeling you get from him though, the judge?
I don't know, it's too early for me to tell exactly, but just to respond to exactly what you just alluded to is when he's like, hey, forget my name this time. From what I could tell, the judge just seems smart enough to know that, if McNulty's going to come in here and tell me this information, I have to act on it regardless some way because I'm a judge, So I don't think he's trying to bury McNulty or anything. I just think he knows, listen, if you're coming in here telling me this, you want me to act on it, whether you want your name attached to it or not. So, and everyone around already knows you and it's coming from you, so there's no hiding it. That's my assessment, at least.
It's pretty interesting, something that I don't think I really get from like shows, and I watch like Law and Order, and generally the only like relationship with judges and police officers and is like the case, but it's never so close. In this, you really get the sense that the police officers are completely afraid of the judge. They will do, even if they don't agree with this judge and this judge is making their life hell, they're all jumping through hoops because of this judge. And that's something that I don't think I've ever really like gotten a dose of before in crime
So
TV
the show's
shows.
giving you a good sense of the hierarchy and, and things of that nature.
Yeah. And remember, one of the writers of the show, one of the co-writers, is a former police officer, Ed Burns. And so that's an interesting tidbit that maybe you don't get from just TV writers, but a former police officer.
Right.
So we actually think that we go to the detail at that point, and that's where we first, or not first, but that's where we kind of get our whiff of Pryzbylewski and what he's really all about.
Yeah, well, it is the first. That's our introduction to Pryzbylewski, is it not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're talking, and you're really seeing where the whole detail is. They're in a basement. There's like one phone. Daniels has no desk. He's got a single chair. And that's no lights. It's almost like a filmmaker's dream to just kind of like craft it into whatever you want. And they make it look a little bit empty and spooky. But the first thing we kind of get from Pryzbylewski is a gun going off in the office there, and they all run out. And first thing you notice, like Kima doesn't even flinch.
Yeah, Kima, I mean, two things. First of all, they're doing a really good job of establishing Kima and her character. I feel like not that I identify with her the most because I'm nothing like her, but what I mean is I understand her character so clearly, as clearly as McNulty. I get her motivations, I get her quirks, I get what annoys her, what doesn't. And just to see her read the newspaper, shot goes off and she barely flinches. I mean, that said more than any dialogue they could have written for her,
Yeah. And of course, the gun goes off, and it was an accident, which I guess we later find out that that's kind of like a thing of Pryzbylewski's.
Yeah, him and his gun. It's just a reoccurring theme here, and destroying cars apparently too is another reoccurring theme.
Mm-hmm. So I guess right after that, Daniels goes to another area of the police department, and that's when he asks the lieutenant there if he can have. Since this guy dumped Pryzbylewski on him, which we find out Pryzbylewski was in casualty, which I think is where like cops go when they're injured. And then I think they all kind of like laugh at him for being there and asking out. I think the idea is that you're supposed to be asked back by your captain, and instead he asked out. So we're really learning that like they've got drunks, they got guys who are like on their way out, they got the guy that's playing with his furniture. His little furniture toys.
And then now that the guy he called like a teddy bear, basically, I'm assuming that's the same guy because I haven't associated all the names with everybody, but it's just a group of misfits, I can tell.
Yeah, and they've really he's been dumped, and so Daniels is going now to this lieutenant to say, hey, you gave me this Pryzbylewski guy. I need your best guy. You gave me your worst guy. Now give me your best guy. And the guy tries to like. Yeah, and he tries to pass off like another guy, I guess a white cop, and Daniel says, I need a black guy to work drugs in Baltimore. So they get Sidnor.
And then they built him up as, again, it was a quick scene, it wasn't long, it wasn't a big thing, but they built him up as this ace cop. So now, later on in the episode, we see him interacting with everybody, and we kind of see him observing all the misfits around him. Mm-hmm. So I'm really curious if episode 3 we get to see his skills in action, and I get to see why he's such a great cop.
Yeah. And so I guess then we go to Bubbles, who is down in, I think he's in the canyons. I always get a little bit confused as far as like.
Before I think we did have another conversation with McNulty and the judge, right? Did they have another? Oh, well, no, we discussed that. I'm sorry.
That was before. Yeah.
He said, forget my fucking name this time. Mm-hmm, right. Sorry.
No, you're good.
I guess what I'm forgetting about is the chicken nuggets. It was a quick thing with the chicken nuggets and.
We haven't gotten. Character. Yeah, we didn't get there yet, but I think first Bubbles is doing the scam. So Kima is on the rooftop with Herc and Carver. And that's where we see that Bubbles is down on the bench with Weebay and Stinkum and a few other guys. Don't worry, I've seen it a bunch of times, so I know the names really well. Mm-hmm. But he's running this scam, and Kima's taking pictures, and you're really getting a sense of like Herc and Carver, who don't have a clue what's going on, but clearly they're investigating, and they're being loud, they're kicking shit.
Carver at least seems to be somewhat interested in learning from and then Herc makes it clear that they're all on the same level pretty much, but she's just higher aptitude than the rest of them.
Yeah.
But it seems like he's at least interested in helping out and contributing, and he's more about his ego.
But it takes him until the end of the scene to get there. But what we see happening is that Bubbles is putting a red hat he's selling hats. And so he's putting a red hat on everybody from Barksdale's crew so that Kima can take a picture and say like, oh, wow, this is a guy in the crew. And they're trying, this is why I said to build your list, to start building out your wire map, because this is how they're going to start to figure out who's in this Barksdale crew, who's a chief, who's a player, who can they get something for.
And there's levels to the hats. The red hat means you're a player. The other hats mean you may be mid-level or you may be just like a street guy. And then they say, if you don't get a hat, you ain't nobody. So it's interesting how Bubbles has that system all worked out, and Kima's easily able to identify who she needs to keep track of. And it seems like they're moving on now from just where they were to a new location. They're gonna case everywhere. There's just drugs being sold. It sounds like, for the way she put it.
Well, as that happens, the exact same time, Bunk and McNulty are also now trying to follow up on this being a possible murder case. And so now, right. And so now they're running up on D'Angelo in the pit at the exact same time that Kima is checking the other half of the crew. And so you kind of get to see how the Barksdale crew works together as D'Angelo is being jacked up. Word goes out. That crew that Kima's keeping an eye on gets in their car and drives over to check out D'Angelo, where Bunk and McNulty already are. And so everyone's kind of seeing like, oh, these guys have a formula. They roll deep. They're keeping an eye on us. So everyone's jotting down license plates. But the chicken nugget scene is what they roll up on, Bunk and McNulty, in the pit. And this is another one of those scenes where D'Angelo, and I haven't figured it out, but D'Angelo's like talking to the kids about chicken nuggets, and their whole idea is the guy who made the chicken nuggets, which is ridiculous, right? How do you get the bone all the way out the motherfucker? Whatever. That aside, they're talking about the idea that the person who invented the McNugget is probably rich and is made tons of money from McDonald's. And D'Angelo has this idea, again, just he's got these concepts of the way that the world works. His whole idea is that the person that works at McDonald's that came up with the Chicken McNugget is just some worker bee who got put right back into the machine as a gear, and he's just got to go do something else, figuring out some shit to make the fries taste better. Yeah.
So, but I find that a little bit different. Maybe not different, but I don't draw the connection with his thing last week where he was talking about, nobody's going to be on U.S. currency unless they're a president. So what is the connection you're drawing? I'm curious.
Well, I think about it a lot, actually. And so in the dollar bill one, assuming that there's a reason that this dialogue is there to tell you something about the character.
Yeah.
Right. He's wrong about the dollar bill. And so then I wonder, is he right about the McNugget? Is the guy that made the McNugget, is the guy that's the food tester, the food scientist, is he making money? Or is he underpaid, undervalued, not getting any stock options? That's what I'm not sure about, but that's what I think he's trying to say. And I think that's almost up to your interpretation as far as how you view corporate America.
Yeah, and what I took from both of those stories is just his worldview is, I guess, nihilistic for lack of a better word. He's just kind of, if you think about it, he's a drug dealer who killed somebody, just got off. And you would think he would have like a positive outlook to at least like, hey man, like shit's good. I'm with the crew that's holding me down. I have nothing to worry about. But he seems very negative, very troubled, very conflicted. So I think those two stories, he's schooling the young people, but it's from a very jaded point of view. And I think that's what the scenes told me.
Yeah.
So far at least.
Yeah. And almost how the two the street life and the corporate life don't exactly make a perfect analogy and don't merge, even though he wants them to.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder, I wonder a little bit more about his influences and where this is all coming from in the first place. It reminds me of like when I have a bad day and then someone says something and I just want to make them have a bad day. And so I shoot it down right away. You know what I mean? Like, and that's where he just
that's where he comes from. Yeah. He's like, I'm not happy and you all happy about this guy. I'm making money off of chicken nuggets. Let me burst your bubble. He didn't make any money off of it.
And Michael
I don't know if this is a theme or I'm reading too much into it now, but Michael B. Jordan had the last word. He says, but he invented them. He still invented them though.
Still had the idea though.
Yeah, still had the idea though. So I feel like last episode 2, he kind of, I don't know. There's something there. I'm not going to read too much into it yet though.
Well, it's almost an innocence of Michael B. Jordan's
Right.
character.
Yeah. It's like he's still got the rose-colored glasses about everything still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
But then that's when Bunk and McNulty do roll up,
Yep.
and Bodie tough talks him. And I mean, this is just an incredible scene from the conversation that they have here to all the way to the interrogation room with D'Angelo. The relationship between Bunk and McNulty, the rhythm that they're on as actors, as an ensemble cast, is like second to none. It feels like you're watching an Abbott and Costello. Hey, Bunk, a vial for your thoughts. Just all these. What'd you say when they're asking Bodie? What'd you say your name was? I didn't say shit. Oh, it's just you, me, my friend, Mr. Shit here. Mm-hmm. Like just these lines, the way that they throw them out there is just so. It almost makes me want to get arrested by these guys.
I don't, because when I see the tactics they used in the interrogation room, yeah, no.
Did you have any thoughts about that whole scene between the rooftop and Kima and her leaving, Carver and Herc on there, and you kind of see that Carver now is paying attention, and then getting into the pit where D'Angelo gets arrested? Any thoughts just in general about that whole thing?
Yeah, I just thought it was a cool. I love when characters cross worlds. When they go from Easteros to Westeros. So it was interesting to see Kima interact with Bunk and McNulty, and they not be aware of each other. Well, Kima's aware of everything, but right. McNulty and Bunk weren't aware of her. So
yeah,
and that comes into play later on too.
Yeah. So they go to. I guess this is when they now go to the actual interrogation room, and that's when Daniel shows up and he wants to know what's going on. They try to play it off. They're still trying to play this off like McNulty's not fucking around with the case. But Daniels already has wind because the lieutenants and the major and the already told him about it.
Yeah, they gave him a heads up.
And
they told him a heads up about the case that the death may go public too, that the murder may go public. So he knows everything.
Yeah, and the brass's whole opinion is fuck McNulty. If we got to fire this guy, whatever. But they basically said we have to let him strike out. That's literally what they said, right? We've got to let him take his best shot and strike out because it'll draw too much attention.
The judge, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so Daniels now is there to keep an eye on it, and he kind of calls McNulty on his shit. And he says, listen, if you want me in, I'm all the way in. And so now he's going to assign Kima to go into the interrogation room with Bunk and McNulty, so he at least has some eyes and ears in there.
Now, let me ask you a question. How do you feel about him telling McNulty that his that Rawls wants him gone? He straight up told him, Rawls wants to hang you. What do you think about that? I thought that was interesting, because I didn't think they were necessarily on the same side. I know McNulty's a thorn in almost everybody's side, but that was like an olive branch, I felt like.
Yeah, I think Daniels is trying to figure it out. And it's like I look at it as like a good coach. Yeah. Or on a sports team, or a good teacher in a classroom. You've got coaches that when a player screws up, they blast them in the media. Oh, this guy doesn't play defense. This guy's not following the playbook. This guy's not practicing. Or when you have a bad teacher and a kid who's a problem child, and the teacher just sends them right to the principal. But you have some teachers that are able to talk to their students and work with their students and help figure out what makes them tick and what's going to make them do a better job. And then you've got some coaches that know how to manage stars. That's what Phil Jackson was so good with the Bulls and the Lakers and Pat Riley. And that's what I think is kind of you've got Rawls who's saying, fuck McNulty. And now you've got Daniels who's saying, hey man, I want to be in on this with you. Let's work with this together. You got to keep me in the know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It could also be him just trying to save his own ass and say to McNulty, listen, your own boss is trying to do you, keep me in the know, just so he can go right back and tell on him.
Maybe.
Which are kind of his
that kind of guy yet, but maybe. I know he is up for a promotion, so
And those are kind of his marching orders to, that they want to know everything that's going on, and that's the problem, is that Daniels didn't know anything.
Yeah, that's true. So our next scene after that, it's not our next scene, but the next thing is when the lawyer comes in, right?
Well, what'd you think about the interrogation? They admit that they don't know anything about the witness murder and tying it to D'Angelo, but they admit basically this whole thing is just to see what happens, to see how he pushes back. So what'd you think about the entire interrogation, the back and forth with Bunk and McNulty, and the way they kind of trick D'Angelo?
I thought it was clever. I was surprised genuinely that D'Angelo was so quick to kind of break down. And it kind of like played into what I saw in the scene before that, man, this guy's jaded. This guy's got something going on. He's in a pretty cushy spot in this organization, and he's not too happy about it. I mean, and it can't be just because he got demoted from the towers. It's got to be more to it than that. So that's kind of what I took from it. And the fact that Bunk and McNulty kind of played that game with the deacon and all this and his 3 kids and stuff, because I had forgot the first thing they say in the episode is, yeah, no wife, no family, whatever. I completely forgot. So I was believing it as much as D'Angelo was for a little bit.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, I was totally buying it hook, line, and sinker too. So
I don't think I ever put that together.
man, it's like the first piece of dialogue is like, no wife, no kids.
You're right. Kima even fell for it.
Yeah, true. Yeah, true. Kima even fell for it. At least yeah.
So they tell D'Angelo the guy's got kids and his wife had already died, and so now the kids are orphaned. They pull this phony picture off of Bunk's desk, telling them that these are the kids, and D'Angelo just starts crying. And then just the most. Sometimes I feel bad. They make D'Angelo look so bad, and they tell him it's almost like a joke. Could you imagine crying in the police station, and the cop goes, "I think maybe what you should do is take a minute, get your shit together." And write a note to those kids and tell them how sorry you are. I would look up to him like, are you kidding me?
That was what I was thinking the whole time. And again, that's why I was so surprised. I'm like, write a letter. But he did it. And that shows just how troubled he is, And then, damn, what was the other thing that he did in there that was interesting? Well, it was a barbershop. That's what it was. They warmed him up with the barbershop story about the kid getting shot. When they ran through the barbershop. So, I'm gonna give D'Angelo a little bit of leeway. He had that other story that was weighing on his conscience too. So
right. Yeah, he definitely seems to have just the way that he reacted when he first found out that the witness was killed.
Yeah.
He seems to have like a value on life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Whereas I don't know, I guess the reputation of someone who's, in a notorious drug gang is that life is cheap.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't see it that way, and that's clear now.
And that's when Levy comes in to pull him out, and he's just. What's your opinion on this whole? So Levy comes in, pulls him out. It took
me the second watch to see all the condescension out of Levy. The first time I was kind of on his side. I'm like, yeah, idiot, why are you writing a letter? But the way he dragged him out, he said, well, how many times do I have to tell you people the same thing? And he smacks him in the head. I mean. The second time watching it, I was a little triggered for D'Angelo there.
You people.
First time
right?
I was kind of on Levy's side. I'm like, why are you writing a letter, dumbass?
You people is very like he kind of suns him in a way.
He sunned the hell out of him because you could have waited to take him outside to smack him. He smacked him right there in front of everybody.
And I don't know, but he's not wrong in any way. But it's the whole idea. I don't know, this older white man and this young black man, and it just felt racist as fuck.
It did have the second time watching it, I did see the little undertones of that. The first time, I was just kind of like, yeah, he deserved a little bit of a smack. But yeah,
it was also interesting. Like when Levy comes in, he says, "You've had my wife's brisket." You find that these guys all have some sort of a relationship with each other. They all know each other. So I found that to be very interesting.
Yeah, that was interesting. They had that little friendly dialogue, and then as soon as he walked in the room, he's like, "Stop writing, idiot." He switched it on. They're not my friends right now, but once this guy's gone, we're still. I mean, maybe not friends is strong of a word, but we're cordial.
Colleagues of some sort.
Yeah.
Okay, so we get through the interrogation, and that's when Daniels then decides that he doesn't care about the note. They do exactly what Kima and McNulty do, exactly what Daniels told him to do. Bring it to me. If we got something real, I can work with it.
And then he also, not to cut you off, sorry, but he also gave him like a chance. He's kind of like, he gave him a plan at least. He gave him he's like, hey, give him this, tell him this, and then maybe they'll give us something real to work with. And then Daniels made the decision not to raise any ire. So why did he do that? Just to be safe?
Well, I think he's got a lot of pressure, and this is essentially what his wife was saying. You cannot lose if you do not play. He's got an enormous pressure from his bosses to make this go away quick. I don't know why. Like, I've just never seen such an aversion to doing their job or finding murderers, but these guys just do not want to do it. And so he's under pressure to not let this thing go out of control. And I think the word he used was red ball, no red balls. And
What does that mean?
I think that's like a really like a hot case, like that you sink into.
Okay. Yeah, because he said no grandstands and no red balls, I think.
Yeah. And so I think he's trying to prevent this from getting, and every time McNulty talks, he always gives like 3 to 4 different things of where this case needs to go, right? We need wiretaps, and we need officers that know how to use that equipment. And
but Kima's agreeing the whole time too. That's
Kima's agreeing, yeah. And so I think it's a little bit of like him not wanting to piss his bosses off.
Yeah.
At first, when I think the first 45 times I've watched this, I always look at it as like he's saying no to we can't arrest D'Angelo. All that McNulty wants is for Daniels to take this to his bosses to show them that D'Angelo absolutely believes that guy was killed because he was a witness. Yeah. And that seems like such a small ask. And I don't think I ever realized that till this watch, this time. And it gives me very different feels about Daniels.
That he wouldn't just grant that small ask, you think?
Because that's exactly what he asked McNulty to do. McNulty did finally for once did it differently. He didn't just go and take it to the press and say, "Oh, look at this." He didn't go to the district attorney or the estate's attorney and try and do it his own way. He didn't arrest him again and try and manage. He went to him and said, "Hey, here's what we have. I think we can churn your bosses with this evidence." And Daniel said, "I'm not even going to take it."
You know, I get where Daniels is coming from because it's nothing concrete. It's a guy writing a letter. I think that's maybe why.
But I guess that's what I guess that's where I'm so disappointed is that does it have to be concrete for the bosses to believe that it's real?
I don't think they care. I think that's what it is. Right. It's like if you're not bringing me something real, then you're fucked. So it's probably to cover his ass. So.
And I think that's almost the heart of the matter that they're arguing two different things. McNulty's trying to argue that this is real, and the bosses are saying we don't care.
Yeah, we're like, unless you got something, a smoking gun, get out of here. So smoking guns. Did I jump too ahead with that analogy there? Because what's our next scene? Is it?
Well, I think it's the cookout, right?
Oh, it's the cookout. Okay,
it's the. I think so, right? It's the cookout, but they're cooking in. This is like a VFW barbecue thing that they're doing or something, right?
Remind me of that. I don't remember that.
This is like the family thing. This is like with all of them, and this is where the wife or D'Angelo's girlfriend with the baby, and they're walking through like the cafeteria hall.
And then they bring D'Angelo aside to see what happened.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of I don't know, man. Was there something? I'm trying to read every tea leaf that may not exist, but is there something going on between Stringer and the baby moms? Or
I don't know. I look at it as more as like it's just family. We still don't really know much about Stringer.
Yeah.
So I looked at it more as like it's just family, but you never know. He's like that tall, dark and handsome guy, and maybe he's that type. But I think it's more like it's just family. They're taking care of each other. He's fixing her food, and
he's like, give us a twirl, and she's like, "What you looking at? Like, I'm not twirling for you." So I mean, it could have been just cool dialogue, but I don't know.
I also feel like
goes up to a woman and then like. If it's my woman, you're not gonna grab my woman and then spin her around and say, "Give us a twirl." So I don't know.
Would your uncle's best friend do that?
Maybe. I don't know.
It also seems like they don't really know each other very well.
Stringer and D'Angelo, right?
Well, Stringer and D'Angelo, Donette, his girlfriend, and Avon and Stringer don't know her very well. And I guess just him coming out of jail, the baby was just born. Maybe they were only together for a few months before he went to jail and she got pregnant, but it just seems like such newness to all of them with the baby, with him, with the girlfriend.
Yeah.
But that's where D'Angelo basically tells Avon that they know everything about the operation. They know the names of the operation, but they don't know anything else. And he doesn't know anything. He swears up and down that he didn't say anything. Avon kind of gives him a talking to about not feeling bad about shit, not talking about shit. It's not D'Angelo's business. Don't let it rest on your shoulders is what Avon basically says, which I think why I said, D'Angelo seems to have a value on life. Avon washes it off so easy.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And then he is also, I don't know, man, some of these feel like veiled threats. It's like, because he asks him, he like, so what do you think happened? Speak your mind. Like, so he's not even really admitting that they killed him, even though it's pretty obvious to me, but he's really not even admitting. He's like, so what do you think happened? And it's almost like D'Angelo doesn't want to say it out loud. So.
And this isn't even part of the show, but I just wonder like how careful are they being? Do they think like he might be wearing a wire too?
Yeah.
And so he's just keeping himself completely distanced from it in general and acting completely ignorant to the whole thing. I don't know. I guess part of me wants that confirmation, wants to hear the evilness in Avon, to hear him say, "Yeah, we fucking killed him. Yeah, we did that shit." You know, like I want to hear that in him and have that confirmation.
I like the way. I mean, Avon they're shrouding him in mystery. Like he only had a couple of scenes, but he looms heavy over everything. So yeah.
So we do finally get that. We get the scene with Herc and Carver and Prez. They're drinking beers, and as soon as this happened, I had to control myself because as soon as the scene came up, I realized I went like. And you looked at me, and I was like, "Oh, I don't want to blow this. So what's about to go down?"
Oh, did I? I didn't even realize I did.
No, it's just you like looked, and then as they were drinking more and more, you're like, "Oh, some shit's about to happen." And I'm just thinking like, "Oh my god, this is just the worst idea in the whole world." So they're drinking beers and they're listening to American Woman, and
aren't they supposed to be on desk duty? By the way, right?
Something like that. Yeah,
they got clerical because what's his name? Daniels gave everyone their assignments and their partners, and they were not on the street. They weren't assigned to the street, as far as I remember.
So they're just talking shit and drinking beers, and then they decide, you know what, we need to show Pryzbylewski how it's done. Let's roll through the hood and let's teach these guys a lesson. Let's show them a show. So they get to I think it's the towers is where they go. Again, I get confused at everywhere outside of the pit. I get a little bit confused, but I assume that the apartment building is the towers. And so they go down there, and it reeks of like YouTube footage of police brutality type shit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Except one of the cops is black. It's Carver, this young black guy, and he's the guy telling all these guys outside the towers who are just with laundry. They look like they're doing laundry. They've got like they don't look like the drug dealers. These just look like poor black people hanging outside of their apartment building, and they're pulling guns and they're pull your fucking pants down, put your face down. They're making people lay down there,
disrespecting them, basically humiliating them. But McNulty, excuse me. What's our Pryzbylewski takes it a step further. Yeah,
you can call him Prez if that makes it easier.
I'll get it, Pryzbylewski. I got it.
You got it. So he takes it further. He's got that kid that's leaning on his car, and he's just and there's all these words, all these slang that they're using. Shitbird is another cop term that they're also using. Another one that they used back a couple scenes ago was cases go to green by way of
cases go from red to black
by way of green. And they're always talking about overtime and cases going to black. Red is an unsolved murder. Black is when it's solved, and you'll see that eventually they'll be writing murders on the board. But shitbird is another classic cop term that they use a lot on the show. And Pryzbylewski just shows you a little bit more of what he's all about.
Yeah, so he punches him in the eye with the butt of his gun. This kid looks like he's 16, 17 maybe. Yeah,
teenager, just a young kid.
Yeah, so that was brutal.
And right then is when Carver and Herc are just like, oh, fuck. And I think Carver says, what the hell's the matter with you?
Yeah.
And Prez just looks like he's all amped up on adrenaline, right? He's kind of got like a sick smirk on his face and like, yeah, taught that guy. But then shit starts flying, literally.
Yeah, literally.
Things start dropping from the building, from the windows. A TV just drops out of the air. Bottles are crashing, and they have to pull their guns. And everyone's kind of taking cover. But Pryzbylewski starts, when they start hearing gunshots and they all take cover, Pryzbylewski starts firing just up into the air. He doesn't even know what he's shooting at. And he's just shooting.
This guy and his gun, man.
So Carver gets hit. Herc gets hit. He gets grazed in the forehead.
Now, when he said I was a little unclear because he said I'm hit, and then I just saw a little cut on his forehead, so I don't know if it was grazed by a bullet or if he got hit by like a piece of glass. But either way, they call back up.
Yeah. And this is where it kind of gets like laid out, and Daniels wants to know the deal, and I think he's looking at Herc and Carver to put the blame on them, assuming that they were the guys. But he asks, who and he really lays out the consequences of what happened. The police car now has been completely burnt to a crisp, which means everything inside of it has been burnt, which means from an equipment standpoint, they've lost all those things. The detail has lost the car. They've lost the bulletproof vest. They've lost the radios. They lost the shotgun that was in, like, it's pretty interesting the way they just kind of break it down, the way that an administrator thinks about these things.
I know, it's so interesting because you'll see a car blow up on a TV show and not ever hear about it ever again. But like, this is this collateral damage for this stupid decision they made. So,
and so he basically lays it all out and says who's the person that cold cocked the kid, and Pryzbylewski owns up to it, and so they did it. And
that was an interesting moment because he didn't. I mean,
switched, right? He just switched.
But switched from, how do you mean?
Daniels went from being first of all, he was angry, but he went to just yelling at them to slyly telling him how to falsify a police report.
Right. I guess what was interesting to me was there was that moment was like, all right, who cold cocked the kid? You got Carver, you got Herc, and then you got Pryzbylewski, and eventually he steps up and says it. But in my first watch, I'm like, is this a moment of honesty out of him, or is it a moment from him out of I'm untouchable because of who my wife is or my fiance is? So I can take the heat for this because nothing's gonna happen. So I'll see how it plays out. But
that's interesting. So it's interesting.
But yeah, like you said, they come up with this false police report really quickly. He's like, get this shit straight, right?
After that, then we get a glimpse of McNulty's house or his apartment. What'd you think? It's just some shots are just such great shots, and sometimes they just open up on these camera angles that makes me like belly laugh out loud.
So what made you laugh about that one?
He's living in. It looks like he's living in his living room. Right, he's living in his living room. He's just got a bed on no frame. It's just the mattress and the box spring on the floor. There's no furniture. There's nothing on. It's like a sad. I don't know, I think the term I like to use is single dad apartment. It's just a single dad who has not gotten his life together since divorcing his wife.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't take too much mental note of what was going on. I was like, oh, he's living like a bachelor, but I didn't put too much into that. But now
what about
pay attention?
What about when he opens the door in his underwear and the kids are just coming down the stairs? Like,
hey, morning, kids. Yeah. So, but yeah, he opens the paper and lo and behold, the witnesses, it's out.
It's out that he was that the murder was a state's witness, and that was the reason that he was killed. But they still don't have that proof. But it's been put out there, and he confronts his buddy, the judge, and says what happened. And he says it wasn't me. He says the press called. They already had the story. They asked me for a quote, and he says all he did was call Burrell. Probably lying though, right?
I mean, his story was plausible. He's like, what am I gonna say? It was in my court. It was in my, you know what I mean? I mean,
yeah.
There's no way around it.
Yeah,
so it's plausible.
Yeah. And then I think it kind of so we also get McNulty now drinking in his car by himself. Generally, McNulty and drinking is just a thing that happens in every episode of the show. Okay. And so McNulty drinking by himself. I love the song that's playing in there. Oh, lover boy, because that song.
I didn't pay any attention to it, but
I love that song that's playing in his car.
Some kids beating on a car.
And he tries to get out to save them, but he's wasted. His tie gets stuck in the door. He tries to go down the hill
at one point, or something like that, or fuckheads or something.
Yeah, and he ends up sliding down the hill and just looking at his badge and just cracking up as he was yelling police. And in my head, I like to think like he thinks, yeah, I'm some police. What'd you think of McNulty there, laughing at himself?
You're just getting more of who he is. I don't know, man. I don't know if I like him yet. I put it that way. But
well, no one in the show likes him.
Yeah. Well, I think Bunk kind of is okay with
Bunk him. Likes him. Bunk likes him. And then the final scene is Daniels in bed getting a late night phone call from the hospital that the kid that was cold clocked, which you mentioned, and in retrospect, it is kind of like a weird ending, but it's probably the deepest and darkest, judging from what we just saw. But that the kid who was cold clocked by Pryzbylewski by the gun is now blind in one eye.
Yeah, and yeah, it was a very interesting way to end the episode. Because I just thought, I don't know. And by interesting, I don't mean bad by any means. It was very jarring. It was very impactful because
Mm.
that scene was already impactful. That scene was already important. But then for them to add that at the end, so we know it's moving the story along because now this IA investigation. I mean, the kid's blind, so I remember Daniels. He kind of said, "Change your story. You didn't hit him with the butt of your gun. You hit him with." I don't know what he replaced it with. I didn't
I,
catch the word he used, but
I think he was saying like a baton type of
yeah,
thing.
I kind of put that together, context clues, but I wasn't 100% sure. But
Yeah.
I don't know, is there going to be a hole in that story now? The kid's blind, you know what I mean? And then there's also, it's just a lot. And there was so many implications off of that I thought it was an interesting way to end the episode.
Yeah. Um, thoughts overall in general about the show, about characters?
I mean, again, my takeaways are Sindor. I'm really excited to see him in action. What makes him such a good cop? They built it up, so now I'm interested. Um, I'm really curious about that guy with his armoire doing his, and then why how's he come into play? Because clearly he's there for a reason. Him being a teddy bear is either they're gonna subvert that or they're gonna lean into that. So
Mm.
I'm curious about that. And then yeah, man, that McNugget story. I feel like someone's probably sent me that on YouTube or something decades ago or something because when watching that scene, I felt like I've seen it before, and even though it's
Oh.
watching it, I felt like I've seen it before, and I feel like that's going to happen a lot. There's going to be themes or scenes or dialogue that I've heard before from conversations or in passing that now I'm watching for the first time. So
Mm-hmm. There's a really famous, I think it's like episode 8 maybe of this season. There's a really famous GIF with one of the characters
okay,
that I'm almost surprised that you didn't recognize. In my head, it's a famous GIF, but I think as soon as it happens, you'll recognize it. So it's maybe in like 6 episodes or so. So that'll be
I probably will see it right away. Yeah, so
yeah,
that'll be
yeah.
interesting. And then I just love how they're setting the stakes. The stakes are very clear. They want Barksdale. Daniels is kind of on board now, especially after the witness is dead, because he's the
Mm-hmm.
first one to say, "What if it's true?" So he's on board. He's an ally of McNulty, even if they're at odds
Mm-hmm.
politically. So it's just a very interesting situation now, and I'm curious to see how it unfolds. Still, I'm locked in. So
That's awesome. Oh, it makes me so happy.
yeah, man.
Do you have
Anything I should know or no?
No, I think the cop lingo was something that stuck out to me as far as
Yeah.
ship
Mm-hmm.
the way that they talk about criminals and the way that they talk about work. Overtime is very important. Payment, the way they get paid is a very important aspect of this show. Um, no, I think we hit on all the stuff. Do
Okay.
you have any like in general feelings about the show as far as where it's going
It's too
or
early. It's
okay
2 episodes, so I can't really. No, I don't have anything in general, but
okay
I do. Again, I'm just curious to see how they set the stage and they set the stakes, but now they're going deeper into how each character plays into those stakes. So that's really interesting to me, and I hope I get some more people established as strongly as Keem has been established because I feel like she's like I get her so much right now. So
I never realized, I don't think, upon watching this before watching this episode for the 9 millionth time, how little we actually get into the Barksdale crew. We get a lot of D'Angelo and we get some great, we get that great scene with Michael B. Jordan and Bodie with
but
the chicken.
Avon, like 5-10 minutes.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
even he has not had 10 minutes of screen time yet. Not even.
yeah, and just not a lot with them. This was just way much more of the police episode than the street episode. So
So
just
we do get more
interesting.
street episodes. I'm
Oh
assuming.
yeah, oh
'Cause
yeah.
I'm starting. So that's the one takeaway now that you say it. I think is like I feel too much on the side of the police and law enforcement. I kind of want to feel more of the other side of things and like what's going on with that infrastructure. So
Well, it's interesting you said stakes because I never really thought about it from like a writing structure standpoint, but I do think that they really do a good job. I didn't really think about it until you said it. They do a great job of setting the stakes for the cops
yeah,
so that going forward now you kind of know where everyone and I kind of said that about Pryzbylewski as far as like he's starting here and now
mm-hmm.
it's where to see whether he drops as a person or he rises as a person, and
Mm-hmm.
everyone's kind of staked their claim on the case. Now you kind of know where everyone stands, what they believe in, and you see that Daniels is being objective, properly objective, The brass is down here with no faith and doesn't care, and the McNulty is kind of a little bit extra. He's like a plus 12 on that. So interesting that you noticed that, because I don't think I ever thought about that. I don't know that the show could go forward with the cool stuff that happens without this episode focusing so much on the cops.
Okay, so now I know to expect some cool shit to come up.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, it's so cool. That's why I'm glad I'm watching it with you, because you just see it from a different perspective than other people I've ever seen it with.
All right, man. So episode 3 is called what now?
Is it the buys?
Yes. So
buys.
Oh man. Okay, so that sounds like that'll be a lot to do with hand to hands and stuff. So that sounds like it'll be a fun episode. So you don't gotta tell me. I can't wait to watch it. I'll see.
Awesome. All right, man. I'll see you then.
Catch you next week.
Later.